If you guys want to cook the absolutely perfect seared mushroom, you never add salt at the beginning. We're going to heat some olive oil over a medium-high flame. For our mushrooms, which are, we talked about 90% water, if we add salt at the beginning, it's going to draw the water out of the mushrooms and they're going to immediately kind of like spill down and start to stew in their own liquid. So if we want to kind of get a little bit of a nice roasted flavor out of them, we're going to add them to the really hot, smoking hot pan and let them cook, and then we'll season them at the end. And when we talk about oil smoking, different types of oil have different quote-unquote smoke points, which are basically the heat at which the oil smokes. Olive oil is on the lower side, so it starts to smoke at a lower temperature versus a vegetable oil. So if you wanted to like really get a ton of color on your mushrooms and that was your biggest, most important goal, you want to cook with maybe a vegetable oil. And if it's less important, maybe the olive oil. For me, I'm making risotto. It's a traditional Italian dish. It's traditionally cooked with olive oil, so I'm going to make it with, you guessed it. So when we talk about the idea of that smoke point in the oil smoking, you can actually see wisps of smoke coming. So the first thing that happens is the viscosity, the thickness of the oil. It thins out, it becomes less goopy, and it becomes really kind of watery. And then the second thing that happens is when you start to lean the pan, you get these things called legs, which are these streaks of oil that run down the pan. So it doesn't kind of run down evenly. And that's how you know that your olive oil is kind of quite hot, about to start smoking. And then the final thing that happens is you get these wisps of smoke. After the wisps of smoke, what happens is your oil spontaneously combusts. I guess it's not spontaneous because you heated the out of it. So it combusts. It actually turns into a ball of flame. If your oil lights on fire, it's too hot. The biggest mistake you can make when your oil has lit on fire is to put water in there, because water, as we know, agitates oil. So then you basically take the burning hot oil that's flaming and you splatter it all over the place. If your oil does start light on fire, just turn the heat off and just let it sit. So do you see this? Can you see the wisps of smoke that are coming up? That's exactly where we want to be. Now, we're just going to really carefully, because it's quite hot, drop our mushrooms into the pan. And I just want to get them as close as possible and just carefully lay them down. If our mushrooms are wet, what can happen is the hot oil splatters into the flame, and then the flame catches it, and then you get that kind of fireball. So if your mushrooms are wet, or if you're a little bit nervous, just take the pan off the fire, add the mushrooms there, and then you can put the pan back on the fire always. Our mushrooms are in our pan, and again, we're not adding any salt to the mushrooms until they've dropped their own liquid. And I'm going to show you what that means, because actually the liquid, the water inside the mushrooms, is going to fall out and they're going to start to stew, at which point we're going to salt them. Our mushrooms, this is a great opportunity to practice your little toss. You can start to see are getting some color on them. Because we had really, really hot oil. You can see how hot the oil is there, flaming up a little bit. And we want to get a little bit of color on the mushrooms because that gives it a really nice roasted flavor. So we can hear all of a sudden that our mushrooms have stopped kind of screaming at us. The oil isn't sputtering quite as aggressively, and if you pull them aside, you can see that the liquid from the mushrooms is starting to fall out. That means that, in the beginning, the oil is so hot that the water that's coming out of the mushrooms is immediately evaporating, and it's making this super aggressive noise, and it's staying dry and it's getting color. After a while, the fire can't keep up, and our mushrooms start to stew in their own liquid. More water is coming out than can be evaporated. Now it's time to season our mushrooms. It's really important to season each individual ingredient, because we want, when we bite into our mushroom, a really distinct pop of flavor. We want that to be a delicious mushroom. We don't want it to be bland. If I were sauteing mushrooms just for, this is a great side of mushrooms. At this point, this is a perfect time to add a little bit of chopped shallot or a little bit of chopped garlic into our mushrooms and let them cook. And then I would finish them with maybe a tiny bit of lemon juice or white wine. The acidity will bring out the natural sweetness in the mushroom. and then maybe even a little bit of butter at the end. Mushrooms have very low fat content. The butter would kind of give them a delicious mouthfeel and also bring out the flavor. Fat helps to amplify flavor. So a little bit of shallot or garlic, a squeeze of lemon or white wine, and a knob of butter, and that would finish, and these would make delicious kind of mixed mushrooms as a entree. So our mushrooms, you can see that now kind of they've dried up again and they're starting to talk to us again. That means that our mushrooms are fully cooked.